Hey guys, it's Laurie of Laurie's Sewing. This is one of those videos where I thought everything was under control, but I had messed with my audio on the XA11 camera. Yeah, why did I do that? So I'm working on this little McCall's pattern for the baby that will be born in my sister's family. I'm doing view F and view E, or view E and view F, of the 3063 baby bubble, baby romper, whatever you want to call it. And I'm doing both of the bodices, but just the short pants, not the longer pant version. Okay, and we've been working on it for a while now. I've got both the white one and the bluer one under construction. I did run out of the white Speckler Vogel Imperial Batiste, and I had to use this beautiful white broadcloth as a lining fabric for the back bodice. It isn't exactly the same shade of white, but rarely do you find a broadcloth that is the brightest of whites that you do with batiste. So it's not a problem for me. It doesn't show through, but the fabric is basically the same. You're going to be caring for it the same. It's not going to react to washing, drying, cleaning in any way any differently than the batiste would. So I'm just trimming out the little pattern. I'm using the actual fabric bodice, back bodice, as my pattern. I use my cabbage catcher for the little scraps. And it's like, I think I have like 4 yards of 60-inch wide. It's quite a bit of fabric, so I don't mind sacrificing a little piece. Okay, get that trimmed and pretty much ready to go. I did decide that I wanted to mark it for some reason with my water erase pen, just to indicate that the broadcloth is the lining, and I chose to just write the word lining right on there, which is fine because this particular product, this water erase ink, just literally washes right out. You don't even have, you just basically show it to water and the ink comes out. Okay, we're just lining up, making sure that the bodice is on the outside and the lining is on the inside. And eventually we will be putting some fusible interfacing on the outer edges of the lining. Okay. And here I'm just talking about how you can change out the bodice of each of those dresses, or the little boy rompers, which is what I did. You can make these beautiful dresses less formal by using a different type of fabric or cutting them shorter, make it into a day gown instead of a christening gown. So it is kind of a personal, or it's an easily personalized pattern. View E and F are going to start on page 6. I wrote that on the front of the pattern envelope for my convenience. So here is the collar, and I decided I hated it. I really wanted to trim it up with that pretty blue batiste, but for whatever reason I could not get those corners to lay flat. So after looking at it, re-examining it from the inside and the outside and back to the inside, and trying to take the blue trim off and then put the blue trim back on, I mean, it was kind of a fiddle fest there. I did just cut out 3 new pieces. I had 1 extra cut out for some reason, and I'm just drawing a line halfway down the center front of the new collar, and I'm going to be applying a filled tuck or a corded pin tuck, just like I did on the bodice front That is size 8 pearl cotton in the same shade of blue. And I'm going to load up my machine with a twin needle and get that dealt with. It's a perfect little trim. I love the way it turned out, which we'll see here in just a minute. Okay, so there's the little collar. I did just clothesline stitch those two, so I've got to cut that center section apart right there, trim off the excess thread, get the proper lining pieces on the proper collar pieces. There we go. Okay, we're going to stitch, 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 leave that open, stitch to stitch, leave that open, and we'll have lined collar sections. Turn those to the outside. Now that looks very blue because it has that blue ink, and I do rinse that out coming up here in just a minute. I'm going to take my skewer and poke out those corners gently. You can kind of roll them with your fingertips, and then just kind of go around the inside to get that little edge nice and tidy. Once I get the ink rinsed off and they're dry, I'm going to press them, and here we go. I'm just going to use the water that I use for my iron. There's nothing in it, just plain water. The ink comes right off almost instantly. Okay, so now I'm cutting the 2-inch wide strip of bias that is required for the little inner leg snap section at the crotch. And rather than purchase a pre-made bias tape, I decided to make my own so it would match. So I've got my fabric sitting there with the warp and the weft at right angles, and I'm cutting this at a 45-degree angle at 2 inches wide. I'm going to use my rotary cutter and Omni grid. When I cut this right here, I did not, as you can see, it didn't cut all the way through. I've got to get a new blade, but I should have checked it before I moved the ruler. I'm kind of being risky here and just using the blade on the cutter to separate the threads. It's just a thread here and a thread there, but you could still get hurt. So I'm going to replace my blade as soon as possible for safety reasons. Right now I'm going to run my piece of bias through this bias tape maker. Just get it set in there properly, and then you can take it over to the iron, and once you get it going the way you want it to go, you kind of need those two pieces to line up in the middle. Press it, and then you've got it. And the instructions tell us to cut off one side of our bias, and we're going to pin that raw edge to the little crotch edge right there on all of the sections. Got a technical difficulty. Okay, here we go. Alright, so then we just flip this over to the inside of the little leg portion there, and that is where the snaps will go. So that's the front crotch area, and then we'll do the same thing on the back crotch area. And with the snaps being placed in that area, we need to do a machine stitch. I would not want to try to put that down with a hand stitched closure. I think it needs the strength of a machine stitching right there. So that is what I did on all four. I just stitched them all down. Okay, now we're looking at the sleeves for the white one. I'm pointing out that I had excess fabric on the blue, and I turned that into an inverted tuck. As it turned out, I had even more excess fabric with the white sleeves, and I'm going to go ahead and explain what I'm doing with these white sleeves. However, in the future, this whole entire sleeve business will be handled very differently. So when I'm just showing you all what I ended up doing with this. Okay, so here's the white sleeves, and I have to draw some pilot points or pilot lines on the edges. So I'm going to mark the two spots where I need to draw those lines together. One there, one there. And I'm going to remove this pattern piece. Oh, I'm also marking the exact center of the top of the sleeve. Okay. So now I'm going to remove this, and I will mark the other sleeve that's on the back. I need to flip my pattern piece over. Okay, and then I'm just going to mark where those lines need to be. And basically it's just for the distance between the two lines. Just where they're supposed to be distance-wise. Okay, then I'm going to take my Omni Grid and lightly sketch right there and right there. And I'll do that for both sleeves. That is where the little tuck is supposed to be. So you match up those lines, which I'll show you in just a minute. And I'm going to tell you, I would not use friction ink for this. I don't know that it would stay out, even if you could get it to press out. Friction ink has a bad habit of reappearing if it gets cold, because it is comprised of both heat erase ink and regular gel ink. Okay, now I'm just going to take one of my sleeves and match those lines, one on top of the other, just like this, and stitch all the way down, creating a little tuck in my fabric. Now you could essentially do the same thing with a twin needle, a wide twin needle, but I felt like this was simple enough. Now I'm explaining the whole point of the sleeve. Basically the instructions tell you to fold over 1 inch, and then you have to encase the raw edge with that little fold. Now they wanted us to have a tuck made, have the sleeve put together at the sides, and then create that hem. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Okay, so this one I decided to do a roll and whip edge on the bottom. A roll and whip edge is a way to beautifully finish off the bottom of a piece of raw fabric. So you can use it for, finishing off a hem and then putting some entredot or some lace. It just gives you something nice and finished to attach something to, or to just finish off an edge. It looks pretty. So what I'm doing now is the white sleeve on the top is finished. I'm going to finish this one the same way. I'm going to take that roll and whip edge and I'm going to put it down right along the very inside line, because when my tuck is folded up, it will hide that stitching. And you'll see that in just a few moments here. Okay, so there it is. And I'm going to do the exact same thing, so that there's the front of the fabric right there where the little tuck is. Tucks get pressed to the top, just like this. On the inside of this little tuck is the other line of stitching, and that is where I'm going to be hiding on the back. I'm going to be stitching down that 1 inch of hem right along there. And I'll just fold it down and pin it, and just like this. And right there where that line of roll and whip is, I'm going to stitch just right on top of that. And when I do, that will be hidden on the front side because it will be behind the tuck. Okay, then once we get that done, we have to stitch the side seam on the side of that little sleeve, and you have to make sure that both sides of the tuck match up under the arm at that side seam. They need to be perfectly matched together. Okay, so these are now done, and I think the next step, I had to put the bodice together before I could insert the sleeves this time, but moving forward, that is absolutely the opposite of what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so that's my fusible interfacing for the back bodice facing or lining. I'm going to just simply cut out this little piece. I'm using my paper cutting scissors for this fusible interfacing. I don't like to use my fabric scissors on that product. Okay, and just fold this in half because that's all I need. Put my little piece right there and pin it down. And if you've not worked with fusible interfacing before, you need, most of the time, you need 2 pieces for a bodice, and you would have one facing piece cut to match on one side and one cut to match on the other side, with the glue dots down on the fabric. You don't want to press with your iron touching those little glue dots. Okay, so this is the bodice front. We will take the bodice back 2 pieces, the lighter fabric, and match up those shoulder seams, and we'll be stitching that together at the shoulder seams and at the sides. It looks like it's off, but that is on purpose. Okay. There. Okay. It's just utter chaos. And at this point you have to understand, I had no idea that I did not have audio. I was just talking and talking. I had no clue there was nothing being recorded. As my mom and dad both used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why did I try to fix it? I don't know. Okay. So now I am going to match up, there we go, stitch 5/8 of an inch and 5/8 of an inch. And we've got that done. Now we're going to pin the collar. Now you'll notice that the collar has been attached right there, 5/8 of an inch away from the neck edge. That ends up being a nightmare. I tried it on both the blue one and this white one, and it doesn't allow the collar the freedom of movement that I feel like the collar needs. So I end up just snipping those stitches that are holding that collar together right there. I just snip them apart. It doesn't allow the collar to lay flat on the front. It wants to roll, and it wants to stand up funny, and it just doesn't look pretty. So I said, no, I'm just going to cut it. It's okay, because both of these little romper outfits have a bow tie made from 1/2 inch wide satin, double face satin ribbon that goes right there at the junction of the two collar pieces in the front. And I felt like having that attached there is just too messy and fussy and fiddly. Okay, and I cannot get it to lay down pretty. So this is where I say, you know what? I believe I'm just going to have to say no to those stitches. And it's really funny. I mean, I have discovered that the big three pattern companies, with maybe the exception of Vogue, but not always, the heirloom techniques that these particular patterns require often are not utilized in these patterns. For example, the sleeve insertion it's just your basic sleeve insertion, and it does not work with these little tiny heirloomy style baby clothes. So the next time I do this, I'm going to demonstrate the way that I learned, and as far as I'm concerned, the proper way to install a sleeve in a little tiny, teeny tiny outfit like this. Trying to do the way they have you doing it here is almost impossible, and it doesn't create that calm sewing situation that you want. I was like practically standing on my head trying to get these sleeves installed, and I realized after the fact that I know better and I'm going to do it differently. But anyway, so now we've got the lining attached over the top of the collar, all right sides together, and the bottom of the lining has been finished with a roll-and whip and hemmed up at, or pressed up at 5/8 of an inch. And we're going to stitch along there and all the way around and down to there. Okay, and that has been done. So basically then you just will be able to see that you're going to be turning this to the right sides. So you'll be able to see the collar and the proper side of the lining, etc. However, you do have to clip. You have to clip your curves and your corners, and all the way around has to be clipped. So right here I'm going to use my pinking shears. It allows for a little more movement and it stops that fabric shredding. So clip the corners, don't clip into your stitches, and then go all the way around the collar. If you do not have pinking shears, you'll need to make little tiny cuts into that rounded neck edge right up to your stitching. That helps that collar section turn pretty. The fabric can relax. That's the value of pinking shears. They basically do the work for you. And they also help fabric stay intact. Okay, so now I'm just trimming the other side. You do want to make sure, of course, that you're not cutting through any of the needed pieces of fabric. Okay, so now we can just turn everything out, poke out the top corner on the back bodice, and pull the little collar around to the front. There'll be some pressing that needs to be done. Pressing makes everything so much neater and prettier in the long run. Okay, push that out. Either use your fingernail or your whatever it is that you have that you use to turn out corners, and then roll the collar out to the front side, and then you'll need to press. And as you can see, we've got that folded edge is now on the inside, and yes, finger press that down. Okay, I'm going to use my skewer to gently poke out those little corners at the top on the back of the bodice. All right. So the next step at this stage will be to get these little sleeves set in. I am pinning in the left sleeve, I believe, and it was beyond a shadow of a doubt the most fiddly thing. It was worse than the blue sleeves. So while you watch this, I don't know what to call it, I'm going to tell you that the next time, and I may even demo this on just some fabric, that I'm going to do it the heirloom way, which is to not stitch the side seam. You do not stitch the side seam, and you do not stitch the side seam of the sleeve. You just have this open fabric. You'll have the front bodice and the back bodice stitched at the shoulder, and it just lays out flat on your work surface. And then you take that sleeve, that whole big open sleeve, and you either gather the sleeve or leave it completely flat, or you can even put a tuck in the top if you want. But you attach the sleeve to the bodice. You attach the sleeve to the bodice in that way, and then you stitch up those side seams, because this little tiny opening under the sewing machine needle is utterly ridiculous. It works beautifully for an adult or even an older child, but a newborn outfit, it's like working with doll clothes. And there's really just not a good way to do that at the sewing machine when it's that small. So no way. And I will demo that. But I think this is going to be just the sweetest little outfit right here. This is so cute. Okay. And then coming up, I think I work on the pant legs, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll take a look at that as soon as we can get there. Okay, so I have stitched the bottom half here together at the side seams, and I'm trimming down that excess seam allowance with my pinking shears. This is done on both view E and on view F. So they are both stitched. Okay, one more clip. And this is where the leg bands come in. So what we'll do, as you can see, we have a front and we have a back. The back has the opening and the front is just a gathered, well, not gathered, pleated, fully sewn, like so. Okay, now we open out the legs and we put the side leg seams together. So right side leg seam, left side leg seam are right on top of each other, like so. So the front crotch and the back crotch are separated, and we're going to gather up that entire expanse from the front to the back with 2 rows of gathering stitches. Alright, so there they've been gathered up with those 2 rows. Now I did not do this on the blue one, and I haven't finished the white one. I haven't even started on the white one yet as of right now, but the blue leg band should extend past the front crotch and the back crotch, and I did not do that. So when you are attaching the leg band, make sure that you have 5/8 of an inch on both the front and the back, extending past the little front crotch area. I'm going to have to fix mine by some sort of a retro fix. Otherwise you end up with a raw edge that you don't want to have a raw edge for. So I will need to repair it, probably by just adding a piece of fabric or some bias binding to it. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but I will say that in my defense, I had just wrestled, for hours with those sleeves. Just, I think 2 or 3 hours. I fiddled and fiddled and fiddled, trying to get them in there. Okay, so anyway, you gather and pin, find the center through the center between the 2 gathering stitches. If you cross the gathering stitches, you will make it harder to remove them. And of course, we don't need anything to be harder at this point. Okay, so there is that. And that is right sides together, so you've got that little fold, and it will fold into the inside. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. Now they've both been stitched, and I'm going to pull out the gathering threads. Make sure you're pulling on either both top needle threads or both of the bottom bobbin threads. Just pull those out and find all of them. On each leg you should have 4 threads, and the reason I say that is those threads are long and could be dangerous for a baby, so make sure you get all 4 threads pulled out. Okay, so this is the bobbin threads. They just came right out. And there's one on the inside of that seam. I'm removing that. And I should have all of my threads. And then you're just going to fold these precious little leg bands, which would be up around the baby's thigh. A newborn baby really doesn't have a whole lot of thigh, but they're still really cute. I mean, of course the baby is cute. I meant the little legs are cute. Okay, now here is what that's going to look like. And it's about now that I realize, I should have not done this. This needs to have been longer. So I'm kind of starting to worry about it. Now I'm going to take my pinking shears and I'm going to utilize my sleeve pressing device that I have to get the fabric up high enough that I can see, and I'm going to trim off the excess. So I'm just using this as a way to prevent myself from cutting the fabric that is hanging below my scissors here. I'm still being especially careful. I could get folded fabric up underneath the pinking shears, and I don't want to cut into my project. Okay, then do the other side. And you do want to do this. You want to remove bulk, and there is a slight inverted curve, and not cutting that curve could create some issues with getting it turned out pretty. So I went ahead and trimmed out as much of this as I could. Okay. My pinking shears worked extra hard. Okay. And I'm talking about how easy it is to change out or wash the covers, and thinking to myself, why have I never done that? Oh my gosh. They're just filthy. Needs to be cleaned desperately. But it is a wonderful sewing tool. Okay. So straightening out, a little bit more. And there we have the blue. So the inside will fold in like this. We will hand stitch that little leg section down, which I think is really cute. All right. And now I'm going to talk about the snaps. They go right in the center of the front and the back. And it's here where I'm thinking, uh-oh, what have I done? But I figured out a way to actually make that work. Now, if you have actual snaps that are snap set, like with a cam or another type of snap setter, you're only going to need to put 4 snap sets in the crotch area. I'm using snap tape, and the snaps are close together and will basically end up being, I think, 6 snaps all the way across, I think. But in any case, if you choose to use snap tape, that's fine. If you choose to use snaps, that's fine. But the proper way to put the snaps on is you want the prong side on the front of the little outfit and the socket side of the snaps on the back of the little outfit. So that can be easily accomplished by simply placing your snap tape there in those 2 locations and stitching it down. This is snap tape right here. So ultimately I will have, I think, 7 or 8 right across there, and then across the back. Okay, here comes the socket side. Right, so you'll make sure they're matched up, and then they snap, and then that's what they look like from the front, which I think is so cute. I keep trying to get myself where I can see what it's going to look like once the whole thing is put together. I think it's really sweet. Okay, so we are almost done. We're coming up to the part where we're going to be attaching the top to the lower edge, and then we'll be done, except for maybe some back closures. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Bama says thank you for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.